Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Mallory Hinks, and I'm currently a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow at the National Nanotechnology Coordination Office. To give you a little bit of background on me, I did my undergraduate and master's work at San Diego State University, where I studied the surface chemistry of silver nanoparticles. Then I received my PhD in atmospheric chemistry from UC Irvine. While I was in graduate school, I developed a passion for science communication and took any opportunity to practice presenting my research to a variety of audiences. And in doing so, I won UC Irvine's Grad Slam competition in 2016 and then placed second in the University of California's system-wide Grad Slam competition. I also won the American Chemical Society's Chem Champs competition in 2016. And I love helping people learn how to present their research or whatever they want to present in a clearer, more concise manner. So let's get started. Imagine you're waiting for the elevator like any other day, but this time, when the doors open, you see the CEO of a major company. He says, "Hi, I'm blank. Tell me about yourself." Do you know what you would say? Tell me about yourself is such an open-ended question, but it's filled with opportunity if you've thought about it ahead of time. I don't mean specifically, this is what I'll say if I run into Elon Musk in an elevator, but generally, this is what I'll say when I want to make an impression talking to someone. And that's really what every elevator pitch comes down to, making a positive impression. And your elevator pitch might be take a variety of forms. Maybe you're trying to get someone to invest in your company, or maybe you're trying to get a job, or generally promote yourself or your company. Or maybe you're simply trying to build your professional or academic network. No matter what you're trying to achieve with your elevator pitch, you always want to make a positive impression on the person you're talking to. You want them to think, at the very least, that you are a person that is going somewhere and that you are worth knowing. And even if they don't invest in you right away, making a good impression will help you stand out in their mind. Maybe they'll want to invest in the future, or maybe they can connect you to someone that's better for your network in the future. So how do you make a good impression? First, keep it short. Make sure you use language that's appropriate for the audience that you're talking to. And finally, be engaging when you're delivering the pitch. You can kind of think of your elevator pitch as a springboard. If you hit it right, you can fly. If you hit it wrong, you might just crash into the floor. So basically what I'm saying is consider how much you're saying, what you're saying, and how you're saying it. So step one is to keep it short. Have you ever had a professor go over the time allotted for class? In my opinion, there's no quicker way to lose someone's interest faster than taking up more time than they were expecting. So to keep it short, you should start with a hook, something that will pique their interest and make them want to learn more. If you've hooked them and they're interested in what you're saying, they'll continue the conversation, either by asking for some more in-depth questions right then and there, or by asking for your card and following up with you later. And if they're not interested, then they won't continue the conversation, and then you can move on without annoying them. You don't want them to come away from your conversation being annoyed and then telling their friends, like, I met this person from this company, and they were really annoying and just kept talking for 20 minutes on and on. That's not the image that you want for your company or yourself or your research or anything. So as a rule of thumb, shorter is always better. It's easier to elaborate on what you have said than it is to take back things that you've already said. So how do you hook your audience? Well, you should think about what makes your research, your company, your idea, or just you particularly interesting. Then you can find a way to lead with that when you introduce yourself. So you can make it short and exciting. So just as an example, let's imagine that you own a company that produces affordable nanomembrane water filters. What could you use as a hook? Does anybody have any ideas? Well, I had an idea. Oh, here, we have one from Claire. She says, I will make your water bill half the cost. And that is a great hook. It's a perfect way to make someone pay attention. Everybody has a water bill. People don't like spending a lot of money on their water. And having a way to cut it in half sounds great to me. So immediately people are going to be thinking, oh, I want to know more. So the one that I came up with was, I'm Mallory, and my company is working to provide 5 million gallons of clean drinking water for the world over the next year. Of course, I just made those numbers up. I have no idea if that's reasonable or not. But the idea is you're giving them what your company is doing and why that's important. So I think both of those could be a really great, great hook. So let's kind of practice this in a more personal way, I guess. So what would you say to introduce yourself in 3 sentences if you were to meet someone important like Elon Musk or Bill Gates? So who are you? So I just want everybody to take 1 minute and write something. It doesn't have to be good. No one's going to judge you. Just tell me about yourself in 3 sentences. It could be about your schoolwork, could be about your hobbies, or it could just be about your ambitions. Whatever you want to tell me. So 1 minute. Go ahead. All right, I think that was about a minute. So now what I want us to do is take another 30 seconds and take that blurb and cut it down from 3 sentences to 1 sentence. All right, I think that's about 30 seconds. Does anybody want to share what they wrote? You can read both versions and kind of talk about how you decided what had to stay. So we've got one. Says, I am Claire, and I am a material scientist. I make the materials that all other engineers need to do their job. It's perfect. And that already is 1 sentence. Did you have a shorter version too, Claire, or? Okay, perfect. I think that's great. So I'll give you my example. I wrote, my name is Mallory Hinks, and I'm a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow at an NCO. I recently earned my PhD in atmospheric chemistry from UC Irvine, where I studied photochemistry of atmospheric aerosols. While I was in graduate school, I developed a passion for science communication. And I think that's a decent way to introduce yourself to somebody if you're not really concerned about time. But if you only have a few seconds to make an impression, a little too long. So my shorter version is, my name is Mallory, and I'm using the passion for science communication that I developed in graduate school to work on nanotechnology education outreach for the NNCO. So you should think of your elevator pitch kind of in the same way. Of course, when you're talking about your research or something else technical, you have an additional hurdle to get over, the actual words that you use. Step 2 to making a good impression is to use language appropriate to your audience. So audiences come in all shapes and sizes, but most likely you won't be talking to a crowd of thousands, like in this picture. More likely you'll be talking to someone one-on-one or in a small group. So if you want to figure out what language is appropriate for your target audience, you need to spend some time thinking about their background and interests. When developing your elevator pitch, you should actually spend more time thinking about your audience than yourself. Do they understand what you said? Are you completely boring them? Are they excited about one particular thing you said? If so, you should pay attention to that. Remember, your goal isn't to simply deliver your elevator pitch. Your goal is to get your audience interested in your company, your research, or yourself. So you'll notice that your audience is the subject of that sentence, not you. That means that they're the focus, and that means that you should use words that they understand. So if you knew that your audience spoke Spanish but no English, would you want to give them your elevator pitch in English? It's remarkably similar when you're talking to technical versus non-technical audiences. It's like they speak different languages. You're probably already comfortable using language that is understood by people in your field or by people with scientific or technical backgrounds. So I won't spend too much time talking about that. But what if your audience has no technical background? Then you need to cut out as much jargon as possible and use simple, everyday language. This isn't about showing off how smart you are or how many big words you know. It's about catering to your audience to make sure that they understand what you're saying. Because what good is an elevator pitch if the person that you're talking to doesn't understand what you're saying? And sometimes expressing your science or project in everyday words is a challenge. A good exercise is to write out your pitch and then ask yourself, which words would my little brother or sister not understand? And let's imagine that you have a 13-year-old little brother or sister of average intelligence. How can you replace the words that you're using with words that they would understand? Sometimes you have to do a little balancing act. How do you determine which is more important? Should you be 100% correct in your word choice? Or should you sacrifice some of your words so that your audience will understand what you're trying to explain to them? So I have a personal story about this. When I was in grad school, people would ask me about my research, and I would answer that I study atmospheric aerosols, which sometimes would result in a confused look. So I would try to explain what atmospheric aerosols were and how they were different from aerosols that come out of a can, but I didn't always have a prepared description, so I usually just stumbled over my words. And I don't think that helped me convey the importance of my research to my audience. So eventually I figured out a way to describe the aerosols simply. So I would say atmospheric aerosols are simply any particles that are suspended in the atmosphere. And that worked out pretty well when I was talking to other scientists, but when I was forced to describe my research to a group of other graduate students in a wide range of fields, it didn't work at all. When I was done describing my research, which took about 3 minutes, a sociology student said, "You lost me at the word particle," which was in the first sentence. So I lost her with one word, and then she sat there confused for the rest of the time I spoke. And that's not really what I was going for. So I ended up I ended up having to adjust my language a little bit. I came up with atmospheric aerosols are tiny bits of material floating around in the air. It was accurate, but it also used simple words that didn't alienate my audience. So I replaced particles with tiny bits of material. I replaced suspended with floating around, and atmosphere, which maybe people would understand, maybe not, but didn't hurt me to change the words. So I changed them from atmosphere to air, and that seemed to work pretty well. Sometimes the most important thing that you need to convey is the big picture. Why are you doing whatever you're doing? Why does any of this matter? So I want to do another quick exercise. So if you're an undergraduate student, I want you to write down in one sentence, what do you want to do after graduation? What is your ideal job? If you want to go to graduate school, what do you want to study? If you want to start a company, what do you want it to do? And if you want to work for an existing company, what does that company do? And if you're a graduate student, you can tell me about your research in one sentence. So take 60 seconds, jot down one sentence about what you want to do in the future. All right, we have a response already. Claire says, I work on making LED light bulbs last longer by changing the properties of the casing. That's awesome. All right, so next thing I want you to do is take a look at that sentence that you just wrote. Take a step back in your mind and ask yourself, why is that important? Why does the world need somebody to do that? And then write a second sentence answering that. All right, and Claire says, this is important because LEDs save energy, and if we make them last longer, we reduce both energy and material use. Reduce, reuse, recycle. And that's a perfect example. So if you were having a conversation with somebody, telling them I work on making LED light properties, LEDs light last longer, it may not be obvious to a regular person why somebody would want to do that. But when you tell them this is why, then they're much more interested. So I also came up with one. This is something that I did when I was in graduate school. So I said, I study how atmospheric aerosols change under different environmental conditions. Now, why is that important? Well, it will help us understand how aerosols affect climate and allow us to make better climate models. And then you can take this idea and then continue it. You can ask yourself, well, why is that sentence important? And then you can ask, why is that sentence important? And as you step back, you can see a bigger and bigger picture and what people may be more interested in understanding, the larger problem. So once you've figured out exactly what you want to say in your elevator pitch, the next step is to just practice. Practice at any opportunity you get. Get out there and just talk to people about what you do. I know sometimes it feels like it takes a lot of effort, but it definitely gets easier the more that you do it. And then the more comfortable you are with your words, the less likely you'll be to fall back on filler words like or so. So avoiding these filler words will go a long way to making you appear more confident. Step 3 to making a good impression in an elevator pitch is to be engaging when you're delivering the pitch. And this is arguably the most important component. It doesn't matter if you have a perfectly succinct pitch or if you use appropriate language. If you sound like a robot when you deliver the pitch, people aren't going to pay attention. And if you're really engaging when you speak, it's possible that your audience will forgive the occasional use of jargon or slight misunderstanding. Now, you don't have to put on a stand-up comedy act, but you should at least sound interested in what you're saying. I'm sure you've all heard presentations from people that just don't even sound interested in what they're saying, even though it's their life's work. So whatever you're talking about, you need to sound interested. So if you find yourself naturally speaking in a monotone, as quite a few scientists do, then you need to make an extra effort to sound more engaging. If you launch into your pitch and you sound bored, your audience is automatically going to assume that your company, your research, or yourself is just boring. And no one wants to invest in something that they think is boring. So try to sound excited about your topic, whatever it is. So let's say your topic is cupcakes. Let me read this sentence in 2 different ways. I love cupcakes. My favorite are chocolate with peanut butter frosting. Or, I love cupcakes. My favorite are chocolate with peanut butter frosting. So one of these is more engaging. Hopefully the second one sounded more engaging to you. So what did I do in the second version? I varied my pitch, I paused at strategic moments, and I changed up the pacing a little bit. And this is easier to do if you have a longer bit of text to talk about. This is a short 2-sentence phrase. So now you want to think about what you're saying and incorporate the right kind of feeling that you want to give off and find the right pacing, pitch, and pausing for that particular situation. Not every sentence needs to be upbeat, exciting, but the point is to sound engaging. So to practice, pick a sentence and say it out loud with different exaggerated emotions. This will help you see all of the options that you have in terms of vocal variety. So you could say the sentence in a serious manner. You could say it in a stressed manner, bewildered, confident, excited, or sad. All of these ways will have, all of these emotions will have different methods of speaking. And if you're familiar with how you speak in each of these particular emotions, then you can tailor your speaking pattern to what you want to convey in your elevator pitch. Hopefully you're not going to convey in your elevator pitch that you're stressed, but hopefully you can be excited and confident. One other note on watching how you sound. Watch out for upspeak. And this is one that I've struggled with in the past. It's when your voice goes up in pitch at the end of a sentence. It gives the audience the impression that you aren't sure about what you're talking about, and it makes you seem a little incompetent. The best way to get rid of upkeep is just to practice. Be cognizant of when you do it, and then force yourself to keep your pitch from increasing. So, moral of the story is practice, practice, practice. So to wrap things up, the 3 things that you can keep in mind when developing your elevator pitch are to keep it short, use appropriate language, and be engaging. And that's all I've got for today. So are there any questions? So we have a question. How do you know when you have lost someone in conversation? So this is a good practice for you to kind of take your audience's temperature, so to speak. Make sure that you say a sentence and then watch their reaction. You should be able to see in their eyes if they're interested or not. And if they're asking questions, they're definitely interested. If you find that you've spent the last 5 minutes talking with no response from your conversation partner, you may have lost them. And you can always just ask. Feel free to say, how much do you know about this topic? And if they say, I know nothing, then you know you can start from the very beginning. And if they say, actually, I'm an expert in this, then you can probably skip that and you can reassess what your audience is. Hopefully that answers your question. So we also have another question. Is shorter always better? And I would say most of the time, yes, but that's not always the case, because if you are assigned to do a 45-minute presentation, then you should probably make it 45 minutes. I know on the TV show Shark Tank, they have a 15-minute slot where they're presenting their, where they're pitching their product, but they also need to have a hook. And if they haven't hooked the sharks in the first 90 seconds, they're probably not going to make the sale or get the investment. So I think always trying to put the important things at the beginning is good, but this is also very dependent on your audience and what your audience is used to. So having something in a scientific conference is going to be very different than if you're talking to a general audience. And I think you should be cognizant of what the expectations are and then go from there. All right, any other questions? If not, oh, we have one more typing. Is chocolate really your favorite cupcake? Yes, chocolate is my favorite cupcake. I actually won the best chocolate cupcake at the Orange County Fair a few years ago with a chocolate and peanut butter cupcake. So that's why I picked that example. All right, well, thank you guys all so much for coming. This will be posted for the record on our YouTube channel, and I hope you guys all enjoyed.